We fly into Colombo's Bandaranaike International Airport and are given a right royal welcome, being fast-tracked through customs and immigration via the Silk Route, only to be served refreshments in the VIP lounge while our bags are collected. It's an hour's drive into Colombo, where we check into the historic Gallface Hotel. Built in 1864, this iconic landmark is in the heart of Colombo along the seafront, facing the famous Gallface Green. The Khan Clock Tower was built in 1923 by the Khan family of Bombay and marks the entrance to the Petta Market. Colombo is Sri Lanka's capital, with a long history as a port, and was known to ancient traders 2,000 years ago. Ruled by the Portuguese, Dutch and finally the British, it became independent in 1948. Colonial buildings are mixed with high-rises, shopping centres and street markets. At 356 metres, the Lotus Flower Tower, funded by China, is the tallest self-supported structure in South Asia. It's on the waterfront of Beera Lake, and coated glass allows colour to alternate between pink and light yellow. Its base is inspired by the Lotus Throne. Only opened in 2019, the tower will be used for radio and TV broadcasting and for tourism. The Portuguese built Beera Lake in the city centre in the 1500s to provide protection for the city, mainly from the local kings. An island in the lake was later used by the Dutch to house slaves, with the lake's crocodiles preventing their escape. After the British took over, the crocodiles were removed and the area was developed for rowing and yachting. Altair is a residential commercial development with a 68-floor vertical tower and a 63-floor leaning tower. At 240 metres, it will be one of Colombo's tallest buildings when completed. The Cosgoda Turtle Conservation and Research Centre opened in 1978 as the first of its kind in Sri Lanka. Green, hawksbill, loggerhead, olive ridley and leatherback turtles have been recorded here. Eggs are collected and hatched, and over the years about 4.5 million turtles have been released. The Madu River, north of Gaul, widens into the Madu-Ganga Lake at Balapatia, then flows a further 4.5 kilometres into the Indian Ocean. It's a Ramsar-dedicated wetland area, home to many species of plants, animals and birds. Our boat trip calls on one of the local people who live on little islets on the lake who produce peeled cinnamon and cinnamon oil. The Kothdua Buddhist Temple. After an early start, we join a whale watching tour from Marusa Harbour. A small flotilla of overcrowded boats take to sea in the hopes of sighting blue whales. A few turtles and dolphins surface on the way out, then the couple of whales that do appear briefly are almost mobbed by the boats pushing in for a closer look. No photos by us. Stilt fishing originated during World War II, prompted by food shortages and overcrowded shoreline fishing spots. Fish stocks have dwindled following the tsunami, and stilts are now rented to people posing as fishermen for tourist photos, and touts demand money. Listed by UNESCO as amongst the best preserved colonial sea fortresses in Asia, Gaul fort was built by the Portuguese in 1588, was extensively fortified by the Dutch during the 17th century, and was taken by the British in 1796. The fort has a rectangular grid pattern of streets with Dutch colonial-style houses, and there are a number of churches, mosques, commercial and government buildings. Damage sustained in the 2004 tsunami has since been repaired. We lunch at the Fort Printers, an 18th century mansion restored into an elegant small private hotel. The Dutch added this seawall in 1729. The 18-metre high lighthouse was built in 1938. Cinnamon wild chalets at Yala are like a little taste of Africa. Yala National Park is a huge area of forest, grassland and lagoons bordering the Indian Ocean in southeastern Sri Lanka. It's home to wildlife such as elephants, leopards, deer, buffalo, sloth bears, crocodiles and hundreds of species of birds. Designated a wildlife sanctuary in 1900, Yala is important for the conservation of Sri Lankan elephants and leopards, and it has one of the highest leopard densities in the world. Yala lay in the direct path of the 2004 tsunami and was impacted only 90 minutes after its generation with a 6-metre wave. We leave Yala and head north to the highlands at Nuwara Eliya, Little England, and favoured by the British as a cool retreat from the heat and humidity of the coast. Nuwara Eliya, the City of Light, dates as far back as 900 and 1000 AD, but in the early 19th century, British planters developed the area from a misty mountain village to a model British village. Set against a backdrop of mountains, valleys and tea plantations, the Hill Club and our Hotel the Grand with their beautiful gardens are evidence of the British influence. In 1828, Sir Edward Barnes started building his holiday home here. It's now the Grand Hotel. The famous Blue Train takes about 3.5 hours to travel from Nanu Oya near Nuwara Eliya to Kandy, through beautiful hills covered with tea plantations, traversing tunnels, crossing old bridges and passing small villages along the way. Sri Lanka's railway system was originally built by the British to transport tea and coffee from the hill country to Colombo for shipping. Kandy is set on a plateau surrounded by mountains, with Kandy Lake its scenic heart. It's famed for the sacred Buddhist site, the Temple of the Tooth. Kandy Lake is artificial, built in 1807 by King Sri Vikrama Rajasinghe on a stretch of paddy fields next to the Temple of the Tooth. The Royal Palace of Kandy is now an archaeological museum. It was the royal residence of the Sri Lankan monarchy of the Kingdom of Kandy, and the last king to live there was King Sri Vikrama Rajasinghe, who died in 1815, the year the kingdom fell under British rule. The niches in this wall are built to hold coconut oil lamps. The Buddhist Temple of the Sacred Tooth relic is in the Royal Palace complex and was completed in 1595. After Buddha's death around 480 BC, the tooth relic was smuggled to Sri Lanka sometime around 300, where the king enshrined it in the ancient capital of Anuradhapura. Guardianship of the relic symbolised the right to rule, and the tooth relic temples were built next to the royal residences. Over the centuries, it was moved from the kingdom of Anuradhapura to the kingdoms of Polonnaruwa, Dambadeniya, Gampola, Kotta and finally to Kandy in the late 1500s. The tooth relic is now encased in 7 golden caskets studded with gemstones. We join the faithful with their flower and cash offerings to file past.
Very beautiful wood carving.